ที่มาจากประเทศอะไรครับ
อินเดีย
อินเดียที่ไหนของอินเดีย
ดิลลี
เดลีนิวเดลีนิวเดลีนิวเดลีเมืองหลวงเลยเมืองหลวงของอินเดียก็คือนิวเดลีเมืองหลวงสิงคโปร์ก็คือสิงคโปร์เมืองหลวงอังกฤษลอนดอนเมืองหลวงของเกาหลีใต้โซลเมืองหลวงของอเมริกาวอชิงตันดีซี
Our whole program goes for over 2,000 hours, so
wow.
students can stay here for quite a long time if they want.
Interesting. I found the U.S. government has a new division, a new branch. It's associated with language learning and teaching and to promote language learning. And they had languages categorized by how many hours it took to learn them, and they agreed with you that they had European languages between 200 and 600 hours, and they had Asian languages between 800 and 2,000 hours. And of course, at say DLI or something, you're not necessarily learning reading and writing, right? It's like mostly listening. So maybe they would have a smaller number, like 800.
There's a lot of evidence that indicates that our measurement of about 700 to 800 hours to begin speaking coincides with the point where babies would begin speaking their native language at about roughly 2 years. The average in the world is 22 months. And so we've got a lot of convergence from different areas where we realize that this seems to be a pretty natural process.
2552 ปีพ.ศ. แล้วครับ 2009 ปีพ.ศ. โอเคนะ
David, I've also read some independent evaluations of the program that, interestingly, everything I've ever read agrees that ALG is one of the only programs in the world that can actually get you to native speaker levels of listening and speaking if you complete the entire program. And then they all followed that with, but very few people complete the entire program. And they said if you were only going to invest 300 hours or 400 hours, you would actually be speaking faster in a traditional program.
That's correct. I think that if the goal is to say a few words or phrases quickly, go out and memorize a few words or phrases. A week later you can use them, or a day later you can use them. And I think that makes sense for some people in some situations. What we have noticed, and we've drawn a lot of criticism for this idea, and a lot of teachers don't really care for us because of this as well. But what we've realized is that if you start to speak or produce the language before you've assimilated it in your brain, you're actually creating I think of it as a sort of like a false language. And you're not using that real language at all. You're using this other thing that you've memorized. And it limits your ability to later learn the language and become fluent. And that people don't want to hear. It used to be that we'd use the word that Dr. Brown had was damage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually follow how damaged a student is. But that has such a negative sound to it, right? But in fact, we can't come away from that concept very far, because we've consistently seen, and we've monitored well over 15,000 students in our database. And before that, the experience of Dr. Brown went for many, many years. We have seen only 1 or 2 exceptions, which means we don't know how to answer why they're fluent. But by and large, thousands upon thousands of people that we monitor, we've seen only those 1 or 2 exceptions to this idea that if you start speaking early, you limit the end result.
Mm-hmm.
So I say to students often, is 60% fluency enough for you?
Mm-hmm.
Is 80% enough? And what people realize if they've ever become conversant in a language is you feel the part you don't have. And so you might be at 50%. What you feel is that 50% you're not getting.
Right.
Or you can't express.
Right.
And that really it becomes a big issue when you're beginning. It doesn't sound like, well, I'd be happy to be able to converse at 20%. But so people's standards change as they progress, and I've seen that over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that in myself. Also, people that are often categorized by their peers as being good language learners are not actually good language learners. They are good at manipulating the language that they have. So in other words, with 2,000 words of language, they're able to communicate lots of ideas, but it doesn't mean that they're remotely fluent.
Right. Our standard for accuracy is the Thai, the native Thai.
Right.
So all of our comparisons from our students to anyone else, always comparing our student to the Thai person.
Yeah.
I think we're unique in that way as well, because most programs compare the student to the student.
Right.
And curves are automatically built in whether we want them to be or not.
It's interesting too that so many of the ideas here are completely contrary to what we call traditional teaching and learning. In Taiwan, for example, where I was giving a seminar and talking a bit about ALG, there were some students that were studying Chinese, and they were very proud of the fact that they, in their dorm room, they spoke Chinese to each other. And I said, well, he's from Chicago and you're from California. You probably communicate a lot better in English than in Chinese.
The underlying belief of most language teaching and most students is that by practicing, by saying something, we are actually gaining progress in our ability. And we just don't believe that. We believe the only way, and Stephen Krashen is the person who came up with this, but the only way to really gain a language is through input. Input to our brains does not come from our mouths. And that's the basic problem we find with traditional teaching.
เมื่อวานนี้นะครับเมื่อวานนี้วันจันทร์ครับวันจันทร์
วันที่เท่าไหร่ครับ
วันที่20ครับ
เดือนอะไรครับ
กรกฎาคม
ปีพศ
2552
ปีพศ
2009
Yeah, in one of my articles I said that in English schools they're always so proud of the fact that they don't speak the local language. No Chinese, the no Chinese school or the no Thai school, and we'll have your students speaking on the first day. And I thought, man, that is just 100% counter.
I think, yeah, the other thing, and what you're saying kind of highlights this, but one of the things that I find we run up against in a business sense, a problem, is that all over the world you can buy tapes and books that promise 30 hours of our tapes and books to get you speaking and fluent in this language and so on. And people do buy those. People believe the sales, the lie, the hype, yeah. And so somehow, and I think in modern society we're conditioned to go that quick route, and our program is just not about that. We don't try to sell fluency in 10 hours. We tell you it's going to take 2,000 hours or 800 hours before you're going to start speaking, and it's not ideal, but the fact is that's how long it takes.
Yeah.
And so we want people to start shifting their idea when they get here. We put a lot of effort into talking to each person who enrolls and getting to know them a little bit and sort of profiling them to see where they should be in our program, but as well, where are they in their thinking and what do we need to do to help them make some mental shifts to realize language fluency is a long-term investment of time. And that isn't so we can sell a lot of hours. If I could find a way to do it in half the time or a quarter of the time, I'd cut off both arms and both legs to do that.
คุณแชมป์มา AUA ครั้งแรกวันที่เท่าไหร่วันที่1
เดือนอะไรครับ
เดือนพฤษภาคม
เดือนพฤษภาคมปีอะไรครับ
2008
แต่นะคุณแชมป์มา AUA ครั้งนี้วันนี้วันที่เท่าไหร่นะ
วันนี้วันที่21
เดือน
วันนี้วันที่21